Hi there, I'm Dr. Hans Toki, and this is a video called Free to Be Me, How Humans Make Life Decisions. What we're going to talk about today is the Convergence model, which is a collaboration of free will and determinism as two ethical theories. Really what we're trying to answer is, why do people do what they do? And how is it that people make life decisions? How much is decided by influences outside of our control and the social conditionings we live in? How much is nature versus nurture a decision maker in how we decide things? You see, there is a paradox between free will, the things we control, and determinism, things that happen outside of our control, and how these influence our life decisions. One may make a decision they think is a good one, and then a crisis happens and it crushes that decision. For instance, have you ever found yourself regretting a decision you made that turned out to be bad? You know, we all have these kind of regrets, I think. We thought we were making a right decision, and it turned out that factors beyond our control changed the circumstances. What we thought was a good decision turned out to be bad. Or conversely, you set a life goal, and no matter what you do, it's a struggle to achieve it. You just can't seem to get through it. You know, a fun example of this might be deciding to go out for a fun drive in the middle of a winter storm because we have a trusty Jeep, confident to get through the snowstorm. Well, you know, I understand this because we have a Jeep and I like to take it out for a spin here in the Northeast, and yes, it does get through the snow as long as I'm not nutty. But then, right when we're in the middle of the fun, we get in a hidden creek bed and we are stuck and can't get the Jeep out. There are, of course, worse decisions we regret. Taking that wrong job we thought was right, getting into a bad relationship with someone that we thought at first was filled with romance, then becoming an alcoholic or a drug addict, turning someone physically, emotionally against us, hurting us physically with abuse, not forgiving someone who's living as a bitter person, committing a crime, and on it could go. Relationships that seem to be great that later we regret. And sometimes not through any problem of our own, but could even be with the other person. So why do we make good and bad decisions? The conversion model tries to articulate this. Now, I understand if you were to go on the web, you're going to find several versions of the convergence model, but they're all rooted in what we call meta-ethics. An understanding of how does ethically things work in the grand world of things, or how the scheme of things. So the convergence model, they've been used by social psychologists, career counselors, religious leaders, life mentors, teachers, and so on. Some of what I'm going to share with you today comes to me from the influence of one of my longtime mentors. He's now gone on in retirement. Bless him, he's still alive in his deep 80s. But he taught me a lot about this convergence of what were you meant to do. Meta-ethics attempts to understand decision-making over a long period of time and its decision on really its effect on our lives, now how the decisions affect our lives. And they're all based, to some degree at least, in trying to understand how we grow into better ethical decision makers over a period of time. A basic assumption in convergence theory is that we grow into better people and into what we are meant to be. At least that's the ideal of it. Perhaps utopian to some degree, but the idea with convergence is we're growing to become something better. But this convergence model also takes into account things that happen that are way out of control. I'm going to illustrate it like this. Our life is like a sideways triangle, like this. that's opened at one end and it narrows to a point or fulcrum at the other end. At the wide open end are life decisions with many different options we could take. So this is where we first envision our future of what we're going to do. Lots of possibilities, lots of decisions, confusion really sometimes, but also real practical and rational thinking and advice we get from mentors about all these decisions on this side of the triangle. As we move over time, and it works in a series, if this is a process over time, this triangle moves like this. At the fulcrum of the triangle is what you were meant to be. And in between these two angling lines are decisions you make that are good, moderate, and poor. A good decision is marked as closer to the top line, a poor decision to the bottom line. A decision that is neither good nor bad is in the middle. You'll notice that the further one gets towards the fulcrum, there are fewer decisions that are neither good nor bad, but they fall in the middle. So to rephrase, we have a upper line, good decisions, lower line, bad decisions, lots of decisions to make at the one end, gathering themselves to a lesser and more middle of the road, moderate decisions at the other end. So, as we are moving towards a life goal, there's many types of decisions that are all strung together. So we start with many, and some are good decisions, strung to moderate decisions, to poor decisions. But as this strings along, the closer we get to the goal, the variance of decision narrows as we learn from various experiences. So let me try and explain an application of this model. We have a goal in life to achieve something, perhaps to get married, finish college, gain a career, or maybe advance in our career. Our ambitions bring us many decision options, both good at the top, bad at the bottom. We make choices based on our free will, on variations of good and bad in between these. Hopefully, as we progress towards achieving convergence, our decisions become wiser, so that moderates. We don't make as many great decisions because we've got experience on knowing what is good. We also don't make as many poor decisions because we understand, I really shouldn't do this. It's going to get me in a bit of trouble. If we continually make bad decisions, we'll never get to convergence. We can make all the good decisions, but knowing full well that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to good people, we can't control our whole destiny. It's going to moderate like this. For instance, if we have addictions that are affecting us in bad ways, then it pulls everything else down. So someone who's deeply embedded in addictions has a hard time moving towards good decision making. Well, one could ask, what if I only make good decisions? I'll be honest with you, that's arrogance. And indeed, someone who says, I've only made good decisions in my life, they're really blinded to what are good decisions. For instance, one example might be to believe that good decisions are only those things that make me feel good. I feel good about this decision. Social psychologists have talked about pain avoidance is a tendency for some, And so good decisions are believed to be those that avoid pain or suffering, when pain indeed might be the thing that moves someone towards convergence. You know, there's proverbial text across several religious ideas that talks about this. You get disciplined by suffering. Suffering gets you disciplined and gets you the motivation to move forward. You know, we could apply this simply to a thing like a sport. You don't get good at the sport simply by just talking a good game or having good talent. You might have all the good talent in the world that's good and believe you're the greatest, but unless you go through the suffering, the tough parts of the game, you don't reach convergence of what you're meant to be. Indeed, some people fall right off the track of progressing in life because they only make decisions to avoid pain. I can relate my students to this. Yes, I can. And indeed, there might be some of you that relate to this. Some of you don't want the pain of writing papers or taking in exams and will write it off as there's no point to it, or this won't help me in my life, or this book doesn't relate to me. You've thought of that, haven't you? Yeah, I know you have. And you get frustrated and you go, Prof, I don't want to do this, it's too hard, I can't make it. Well, only to find out later in life that that book or assignment they may have hated, that was pain, was actually what moved them forward. I've got to give you a good example of this of one of my students. This was a social research course. That's a tough fourth year undergraduate course. And she was not a quantitative person. What that means, someone who's good with numbers. And she was in hospitality services and was getting her degree to try and be, working as a manager in a hotel, restaurant, that kind of thing. And so part of the social research was that you had to quantify or measure and learn Excel software in order to pass the class. She was frightened. And she said to me at the beginning of the semester, Prof, I think I can't do this. I've never in my whole 3.5 years of college gone through anything like this. I said, well, follow the process. Do what you have to do. I believe you can do it if you follow the instructions. Well, she committed herself and dedicated herself to learning Excel and became not only good at it in a period of 3 months, but also started tutoring, believe it or not, some of her classmates in Excel. She found out by trying and going through the process, she was actually pretty good at it. Well, the epilogue of the story is about 3 weeks after she had graduated. I get an email back from her and says, Prof, I just had a job interview at a major hotel. Of course, she's going to reach her goal to work in one of the hotels. And they just pulled me into the second interview. And they put me in this room in front of some computers. And what do you think I had to do, Prof? It so turned out the whole hotel system ran on Excel. And the first past the post to the next stage of the job interview was to be able to run Excel. And bang, she went in it. And in her email, she said, never in my 4 years of learning catering, of learning setups, of learning people management, did I ever learn Excel. And that Excel was what you had to know to work at the hotel that wasn't that far from where she worked. The further epilogue is she ended up being a manager at a shishi restaurant way out in the Hamptons of Long Island. And if anybody knows where that is, that's where all the rich people go. So the funny part of the story is her suffering in that 3 months as a student and stuff she couldn't believe she could do turned out to actually move her forward to the convergence of being a manager at a shishi restaurant out on Long Island. So the good decision would be to use one's free will and do the hard thing. The bad decision would be lounging on the couch and avoiding the hard thing, though at times it might seem more pleasant and good. There is a caveat to all of this, of course. Determinism. This is a tough one. When things happen that are out of our control. Sometimes there are miraculous things that happen that have nothing to do with our decision making that improves our lot in life and progress towards a life goal. Some people attribute this to coincidence, happenstance. Some people to divine intervention. It came from the gods or God. Some people, fate. It just so happened that way. Let me apply this a little bit. Perhaps meeting the right person at the right time in an elevator. Excellent weather on the farm crops. A lottery win on a ticket you'd been given as a gift. Physical healing from an illness or malady. That one's really touching based on something that came on my Facebook today of a person back in my home city in Vancouver, Canada, who received a liver transplant 1 year ago today. And they went inside and found no cancer around the liver, which allowed her to get the transplant that was sitting right there. If there was cancer around her liver, they were going to sew her right back up, and that would be it for her. Miraculously, I suppose, fate, miracle, healing, there was no cancer around the liver. So she had the liver transplanted, and today a nice cookie appeared on my Facebook page. It's the 1 year anniversary. The fate side is just down from her in that hospital was another gentleman waiting for a liver. If she had had cancer, that liver would have been marched down the hall to him. So he had to wait. Is he a bad person because he didn't get the liver? Is it fate because timing was off? So she could have lived with the idea that she received the liver because something miraculous inside her. There was no cancer around her liver. Or with a sense of pain that she deprived someone else of life. Well, there is a happier ending to the story, is he was able to receive another liver 6 days later, and they become great friends, the two couples, her and him and their spouses, and this joy of the first anniversary of being alive. So here we have fate, coincidence, miraculous, all converging into something. Other times, a crisis can happen that has nothing to do with our decision making and hurts our lot in life and progress towards a goal. A car accident with terrible injuries where you weren't at fault. A bankruptcy of a business due to a hurricane or tornado, or who could have thought COVID. A robbery, a disease, an untimely death to a loved one. These crises all cause us to ask, why do bad things happen to good people? There is no good ethical answer, whatever anybody might try to say, why bad things happen to good people who make good decisions, nor why good things seem to happen to some who make bad decisions. Way back, a leader said to a group of us, life's not fair, but God is good. It is that way, isn't it? Life's not fair, but goodness exists. So I don't have an easy answer to this question, nor do you, nor does anyone really, no matter what they try to say. We can rest on the hope that in crisis, perhaps divine intervention or human intervention, operation, a loved one, or a miracle will lift us out of the mire of pain. But note, the convergence model places most things in life into the constraints of free will in the good, middle, and bad decisions. What we can control is good, middle, and bad decision making. One final note, there's many convergences in life. Once we achieve a goal, another triangle opens up for another goal. So we move through the decision process again and again and again to achieve multiple convergences. You understand that? 1, 2, 3. Life is made of a strain and a string of convergences. So indeed, some have argued that we only reach convergence in our later years when we reflect on our legacy and truly know if over a lifetime we have achieved our goals. Kubler-Ross, in The Stages of Life, talks about an elderly folk at the very end live between this love and lament conundrum, where they think about their legacy of how much love they gave, or their legacy, how much they lament. I was a chaplain at Ground Zero, well over 20 years ago now, and one incident, people shall remain nameless under confidentiality rules, but the illustration's great and says something here. It was an elderly gentleman that was in the respite center where I was working, right adjacent to Ground Zero. He had gray hair. He was in his, I would guess, 60s, was dressed in a fine suit, and had dust all over the suit. And so I asked him, "What have you been doing?" "Collecting glass." What? I thought, collecting glass? There's a big pile, 16 stories feet up there, all around. So I knew there must be a story to this. So I asked him, "Tell me the story." Well, it so happened that the mayor of New York City had asked him as his legacy project before he retired to build the Crystal Gardens. The Crystal Gardens is a large, fancy dome made out of glass adjacent to Ground Zero. You can go there today and see it, where several concerts and a big kind of garden area as well, and shopping area behind it. It really was as a community gathering place in Battery Park City. He had put a lot of the building envelope around a lot of New York City skyscrapers. And that means glass or whatever. That means enveloping the building. That was his big company. And he had moved out to Long Island already, but he'd come back into Ground Zero to collect glass from the Crystal Garden. His legacy project, into little tiny cups. This would make no difference to the cleanup of Ground Zero. Indeed, maybe it made danger, but for him, it was his legacy was the glass to that point in his life. But he shared how he had not paid much attention to his grandchildren, really had spent all his investment time in the business, and hadn't really invested in legacy love type things. And he was lamenting this, and this was his memorial. So I encouraged him, you need to go back to Long Island and spend the rest of your years investing and making good decisions for your loved ones. He took this, I trust, as a great encouragement to find some hope out of what had been a hopeless scenario. In the end, it's up to us to determine how we move towards a life goal, the convergence, to that place where one becomes what I'm meant to be. One of my great mentors said to me, it is a process. Of course, this process can be simultaneously joyful, miraculous, mundane, painful. So may I encourage you to stay in the process towards convergence. Be joyful over the miraculous and making good decisions. Recognize there's moderate, uninteresting, usual decisions to make. Know that pain can come. Avoiding bad decisions, knowing that some decisions we make might inevitably be wrong decisions. But over time, growing towards the convergence of what we're meant to be. So, finally, what convergence are you reaching for? How are you making good decisions? Have a great day. I'm Dr. Hans Toki.